Did you know that No Man's Sky has a story? And the story in No Man's Sky really makes you think, or at least it really made me think. No Man's Sky is this big sandbox survival game with tons to do, but the story doesn't get talked about much, and I think that is so unfortunate. I have about 100 hours in No Man's Sky since coming back to it for the first time since 2017, and I'm realizing that there is a ton of lore here. I have not looked up lore tidbits online, but the story is deep and existential, and the additional lore about each race and their history and place in the universe goes much further than what you might expect at first. Few games have made me think in the way that No Man's Sky has. It is easy to overlook the story and or not really engage with it, but if you choose to, you can get into deep philosophical and moral questions. The story all seems pretty straightforward at first. You appear mysteriously on a planet and you repair your ship and take off into outer space, and you quickly find a lost soul calling for your help from afar. Obviously, you want to help them, so you make it your mission to find them and save them from the planet that they appear to be marooned on. When I started, I figured I would eventually find them, and the story would take me to the center of the galaxy while finding my newfound friend. But the story quickly unravels, and it is only the start in discovering the true nature of the universe and its inhabitants. I want to add a spoiler alert here. Even though this game is about 10 years old, I'll be talking about some very big revelations from the story, so if you haven't played and have no idea what I'm talking about, I'd recommend playing the story first to find out and coming back later. Of course, it's up to you whether you want to be spoiled, but there are pieces that, in my opinion, are best left to be discovered in game. But let's get back to it. When I last played No Man's Sky, back in 2017, I remember finding Atlas stations, but I couldn't tell you anything about the story. In fact, I don't think that the Artemis quest was even in the game yet, and the main story was solely the Atlas path. But now the story is part tutorial and part main story quest. You gain access to many blueprints by playing the story, and you learn basic mechanics in order to get by in the Euclid galaxy. On a side note, I actually think they've done a really good job with the tutorial. If you've been playing No Man's Sky for a long time, you may forget, but there is a lot going on in this game that you need to learn, and the tutorial makes it all very simple and easy to pick up quickly. But even though the story is part tutorial, it still picks up steam pretty quick. I wasn't prepared for what was in store for me, and when the Atlas kidnapped me, I started to learn some of the secrets hidden in this game, and it left me absolutely flabbergasted. Right now, this kind of feels like it's just designed to keep me like on this treadmill forever. Like there's some malevolent force that's just like watch you, run on this and you can never get off. You know what I mean? I don't know. I noticed that after talking to the Atlas, I was teleported to a planet that I'd never been to. Once I found my ship, I realized it was the exact same setup as how you start the game. And it made me start to contemplate what kind of power the Atlas actually has. The Atlas could reset me, whatever that meant, and at least some of the time I'd be reset with no memory of what happened. That's terrifying, but I also didn't know what it all meant. And shortly after all of this, I learned that my friend Artemis, the one I was supposed to find, was actually dead. They died a long time ago, it seems. But before I found that out, they were clearly speaking to me in my starship. They were responding to me as if they were alive, so it wasn't just a recording of them. Something strange was going on. And apparently, it is possible to allow others to live on in the digital ether in the No Man's Sky universe. So at one of the first points that the game really makes you start to think, the game presents you with a moral dilemma. You can save the digital essence of Artemis inside a simulation where they will never know they're dead. They may live out their time in the simulation, presumably for eternity, without ever knowing. But you don't have to do that. You can simply say goodbye and destroy the digital echoes on which Artemis now resides. Naturally, that made me consider what is right and wrong, and whether I would want to live in a simulation or just be let go. The game makes it very clear that neither option is wrong, and you should be proud of yourself regardless of which choice you make. But I would be willing to bet that how the player makes the choice is usually determined by the moral compass of the player. I don't mean to imply that there is a wrong choice, as there certainly isn't a morally reprehensible action, in my own opinion. I only mean to say that most people are probably going to have an innate feeling of what they think is the right thing to do. For me, it was to let Artemis go. I strongly considered putting them in the simulation, but my understanding was that they had already technically died, and it seemed right to let them pass on in all forms. But come to find out that the game at that point is simply priming you for the big reveal that the entire universe in No Man's Sky is a simulation itself. Yes, of course, No Man's Sky is a simulation itself and that it is a video game and the universe is inside of the game. But I mean, the actual lore of the game is that the travelers and the Gek and Vy'keen and Korvax are all living inside of a simulation created by the Atlas. The revelation that the universe is a simulation is massively existential. And I think that the natural response is to question your meaning and purpose because nothing is quote unquote real. But what is reality if not a construct of your own mind? Even if your existence is solely within a simulation, everything that you see and feel and touch is real to you. Simulation theory is a real scientific theory which suggests that everything in our own human universe is the product of a simulation, just as we learn that it is inside No Man's Sky. There is far from scientific consensus on this being a real thing, but respected scientists stand on both sides of the aisle, and I certainly won't advocate for whether or not it is the accurate theory of the universe. But if you were to find out tomorrow that our universe is, in fact, a simulation, would it change your life at all? I would argue that no, it wouldn't, or at least it shouldn't. With the caveat that if you have strongly held religious beliefs, that revelation could be a bit earth shattering. But I suspect religious doctrine around the world would either denounce the finding of a simulation or say that their God is still compatible with our reality within a simulation. But all that aside, my point is that whether our experience was created by the Big Bang or a simulation or God, it doesn't really impact the lives that we lead. The entirety of our existence as human beings takes place within our minds. We make our own meaning and purpose. We have beliefs, likes, and dislikes, and nuances to our personalities. You are uniquely you, and I am uniquely me. And you have the opportunity to live your life as you see fit. Everything about you and me and the world around us is real to us, and that makes it real. I don't normally expect to go down philosophical rabbit holes while playing video games. But that is exactly what No Man's Sky pushed me to do within its story. And for the travelers in the game who learn that their existence is a simulation and that the Atlas only has 16 minutes left to live, all they can do is continue living their lives and exploring the universe, just as travelers have always been created to do. And there are a couple other smaller pieces that I want to touch on regarding the story. And the first of which is that there are suggestions that the travelers don't have free will. You see it in some of the texts in conversation with the Atlas. Travelers are destined to explore and to find the Atlas and maybe help it save itself someday. I haven't explored much of the lore beyond some of the obvious from playing through the story, but I have to ask, is there always a traveler who goes to reset the Atlas in the hopes that it staves off destruction? It seems like that's certainly what you as the main character were created to do. But maybe the travelers are not fully complying with that role, so I don't know if there are limits to the lack of free will. Again, I imagine that's a rabbit hole that I can dive down much further, but it's not explored as much explicitly in game. And finally, in addition to all of this, and intermingled to a certain extent with the story, but also completely separate from the story, there's substantial lore in regards to the Gek, the Vy'keen, and the Korvax. Much more than I would have expected. Some of that history is revealed through the main story, and some of it is revealed at points of interest, so there's probably quite a bit more for me to explore there. But those stories are surprisingly fleshed out and actually pretty dark as well. The history involves the Gek enslaving the Korvax, and the Korvax go into extreme measures to free themselves. And all three of the races worship the Atlas in some way, tying back to the main story. I'm sure I could make a whole other video talking about that portion of the story, but the reason I bring it up is to drive home the point that there is a much deeper well in No Man's Sky than you might initially think. And not only that, I'm sure there's much more that I haven't uncovered because I have not actively sought out questions and answers online. As I continue to learn every single day, there are so many reasons to play No Man's Sky. And the story is yet another one. And the story is grossly underappreciated. I think people see No Man's Sky for the sandbox elements and the creative elements and all the crazy things that you can do within the game, which is fantastic. And the game is great for all those things. But you don't really hear about people talking about the story. And it probably should get talked about a little bit more because there is a lot there. If you go into the story ready to think and consider life, you'll probably find something to enjoy about it. And if you have made it this far, thank you very much. And please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I may have rambled a bit here, but I've been thinking a lot about the No Man's Sky story and had to get something down on paper and into video to share with you guys. This story made me think about things that I like to think about, but don't think about very much when playing video games. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.